people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. The latest from the junior middleweight division is Tszyu is on the mend, eyeing redemption and chasing greatness. In 2025, careful he doesn't slip on a pebble while chasing greatness. Tszyu has aspirations for a big 2025 following a poor 2024. Tszyu entered 2024 as the WBO junior middleweight champion. He was undefeated and on the cusp of unifying the division. He faced Sebastian Fundora on short notice in a title defense. The vacant WBC title was also on the line, giving Tszyu all the more reasons to come out with a win. He started the fight while establishing an early lead, but the fight changed when he accidentally connected to Fundora's elbow, causing a cut over his hairline. Tzyu's corner decided to continue the fight when they had grounds to stop it. The decision was poor, as Tszyu continued to bleed. He lost the split decision on the cards. In his post-fight comments, Tszyu admitted that his vision had been hampered, but the history books will remember him for this first loss. Well, he fought courageously, he did, but his corner, maybe they should have pulled him out? What do you really get for being courageous in a situation like that other than a pat on the back and an attaboy?
Attaboy.
The Australian should arguably have taken some time off before deciding his next move, but Tszyu decided to jump back in the ring against Russian Bohachuk Murtazaliev. The latter was the IBF junior middleweight champion. Tim had the chance to win a world title to banish the memories of the Fundora loss, but he looked far like the man who was a former world champion. Murtazaliev dropped Tszyu 4 times on his way to stopping him. Tszyu's post-fight comment showed a fighter devoid of confidence, but he is targeting a positive year moving forward. 2024, a year of adversity. Considered myself a throwback fighter. I didn't care who I had in front of me. I was willing to take anyone on. Things don't always go to script, but that's the best thing about boxing. What doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. Appreciate everyone's support. Sorry that I let a lot of people down. I like to punch on with the very best, and that's exactly what I'll keep doing, and that's punching on with whoever. Hope everyone was happy and has a prosperous new year. 2025 is the year we all become great. In whatever we do, chase greatness and never stop believing. See you all soon, Tszyu said. There are still big fights out there for him. The former undisputed junior middleweight champion Jermell Charlo has said he wants to fight this year. Charlo and Tszyu have a lot of history. They were on course to face each other in 2023, but Charlo pulled out of the fight after, quote-unquote, injuring his hand. Charlo then avoided Tszyu on his return by facing Canelo Alvarez at 168. Charlo was stripped, making Tszyu the WBO champion at 154. But Tszyu never won the title outright. He has an incentive to face Charlo, but he is also targeting bouts with Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. He won't get either. Terence Crawford has bigger fish to fry. He might end up fighting Canelo at 168. Now, Errol... I actually think a fight between Errol and Tim makes a lot of sense, because Errol's coming off a loss, and so is Tim. Errol needs to get his feet wet at 154 instead of being rushed into a title shot with Sebastian Fundora. That is, rushing himself into a title shot with Sebastian Fundora. Rumor has it that moving forward, now that he's not with Derek James anymore, he may be trained by Breadman Edwards. Though you figure that by the time they get this Fundora fight over the line, that hasn't even been officially announced yet, 2 years may have passed since Errol Spence Jr. has fought, and 3 years would have passed since he actually won a fight.
Yeesh.
I think a fight between Errol and Tim under these circumstances makes sense. And as far as Sebastian and what he should do, he should be moving into a unification match with Bohachuk Murtazaliev. Now I know that Samson Lukowicz will have none of that. He prefers that he fight a guy on the bounce, a guy on the rebound, and an active guy in Errol Spence Jr.
For obvious reasons.
Low-hanging fruit, that's what they're after, while he holds not one, but 2 alphabet titles hostage, because he asked for this. He asked for permission to fight a voluntary.
Hell, even before that, right after the Tszyu fight, what did Samson Lukowicz say? Terrence Crawford is gonna have to wait because we want to fight Errol Spence Jr. That was the night he beat Tszyu, so this was always their plan.
Back over to Tim and what Tim needs to do moving forward. Stay domestic, at least momentarily. Stay domestic while you rebuild and re-strategize, regroup. After a horrific 2024 abroad, go back home to where it all started.
In 2025.
You basically spent the last 12 months losing. You have to regain your confidence whether you like it or not. You need to remind yourself of what it feels like to win.
Nothing is impossible.
Can come back from this if he takes his time and measures his approach. That's the problem with too much success too fast. You develop a false sense of security, false sense of confidence. Can rebuild, but he has to take his time with it.
Yes, you can!
The residual effects of the Sebastian Fundora fight lingered into the Bakram Murtazaliev fight as Tszyu periodically checked his head to see if he was bleeding.
He thought the cut opened back up.
It didn't, but that didn't stop him from checking, and what that communicates to me is he needs to make all of that, all of 2024, a memory, a distant memory, and the only way to do that is to get back into the fire, get back out there, and win again!
Just do it!
I still think he should fight Michael Zarafa in his next fight, then follow it up with an Andrei Mikhailovich fight afterwards.
Then maybe Erickson Lubin, if he's still around.
You get 3 fights under your belt next year, all in Australia.
You make last year a distant memory this year.
Not just for yourself, but the fans. That has to be the first order of business. Elsewhere in the junior middleweight division, count Sergey Bohachuk in versus Jermel Charlo, Sebastian Fundora, Bakram Murtazaliev, and everyone at 154. With 3 champions and multiple elite contenders banging on the door in the junior middleweight division, Sergey Bohachuk has some work to do to find the clearest path to a belt. That effort is eased. Bohachuk promoter Tom Loeffler says, because there's likely no one in the division more willing to meet any fighter in the group, at any location, at any time. There's no question that Bohachuk's willingness to engage with any junior middleweight is supreme. Loeffler told Boxing Scene this week, days after the Ukrainian dominated a replacement fight for the ill former champion Israel Madrimov and trounced Ishmael Davis by way of a 6th-round stoppage after 2 earlier knockdowns in Saudi.
Ishmael Davis actually got off to an alright start in the first round, but it was all downhill after a while. Sergey Bohachuk's pressure, his aggressiveness, it wore him down, and it didn't even take that long.
He's one of the most exciting fighters in boxing, with his knockout ratio being 96%, and his interest in fighting anyone. Loeffler reminded that Bohachuk, 25-2 with 24 KOs, was due to fight the current WBO, WBC, junior middleweight champion Sebastian Fundora March 30th, before Keith Thurman was injured, leaving Fundora to step in and fight then-champion Tim Tszyu, who we just talked about. Fundora emerged with a split-decision triumph and then turned his attention to former welterweight champion Errol Spence Jr. Bohachuk defeated Brian Mendoza by a wide decision earlier on that March 30th Fundora vs. Tszyu card, after Mendoza had knocked out Fundora. As Fundora waited, Bohachuk sought activity and produced a Fight of the Year candidate in August, twice knocking down the highly avoided, unbeaten Virgil Ortiz, but losing by a majority decision. Undeterred, Bohachuk agreed to fight Israel Madrimov, following the Uzbek fighter's narrow loss to WBA junior middleweight champion Terrence Crawford on August 3rd. Davis was already on the December 21st card, so he showed up in tremendous shape, but Sergey showed his class by stopping him in the 6th, furthering our view that Sergey is really at the top of that division, Loeffler said. Loeffler told Boxing Scene that he's reached out to the PBC to propose Bohachuk versus former undisputed junior middleweight champion Jermel Charlo, and he's also expressed interest in fighting new IBF champion Bakram Murtazaliev, who's recovering from an injury and currently without a mandatory challenger. If Spence opts not to take the Fundora fight, Bohachuk would also like to revisit that bout since he stands as the WBC's number 3 rated contender. Not only is he willing to fight anyone, but everyone now knows from this year's work that whenever he steps in the ring, he's going to bring an exciting fight. He's an all-action guy who continually comes forward and doesn't mind getting hit a few times in order to deliver his punches. Loeffler said, in the Virgil Ortiz fight, they were both busted up, but they released Bohachuk right away and they kept Virgil longer for observation. That shows the physical wear and tear Sergey puts on someone in a 12-round fight. Bohachuk will return to the gym next week as the promoter assesses the division's landscape, seeking the next quality fight. I'll tell you now that it's not going to be Jermel Charlo. Jermel Charlo hasn't fought anyone in over a year, and he hasn't fought as a junior middleweight in a little over 2 years.
Remember, the last time he fought at 154 was the Brian Castano rematch. That was over 2 years ago.
There's a lot of talk about him coming back to 154. I'm skeptical about it, but even if he does, he ain't gonna fight Sergey in his first fight back.
What about Errol?
Errol and Sebastian Fundora jointly are using each other as a shield, an escape from all the other junior middleweights. All of this talk about a fight between them, and still no official announcement. It's been this way for months. It's been this way since Sebastian beat Tszyu last year.
In March?
Now think about it. We're closer to March of this year than we are to March of last year. That's how long it's been, and that's how it's gonna be. Sergey's barking up the wrong tree if he thinks he can get a fight with either Errol Spence or Sebastian Fundora. It's not gonna happen.
His best bet is Bakram.
Nobody's in a hurry to fight Bakram. Since he did what he did to Tim Tszyu, who do you actually see calling him out? Who do you see piping up to take his red belt from him?
That's Sergey's best bet to fight for a belt.
Bakram. I've no doubts that after what he did to Tim, the entire division is looking at Bakram as a bit of a hot potato, that even if he is a champion, he's not that well known, and the risks may outweigh the rewards. They're not in a hurry to fight him, but they're not really in a hurry to fight Sergey either. That's why they need to fight each other. Sergey Bohachuk's from the Ukraine, Bakram's from Russia. Art kinda imitates life between those two, huh?
In a manner of speaking.
To get them together, maybe what Tom needs to do is reach out to Turkey instead of wasting time on the PBC. Turkey's used him on one of his Riyadh season shows before. Maybe he can use him again. This time against Bakram Murtazaliev. That's going to be an all-action shootout. The perfect decorative item for a big Riyadh season card. And it wouldn't even be that expensive. These two guys are not the kind of guys the way you have to twist their arm to get them in the ring.
These are road warriors, these guys. They don't know what home field advantage is.
That's who they need to go after. Or whoever the highest ranked contender is via the IBF. Becomes mandatory. If for whatever reason you can't get that fight in a jiffy, get in position to get that fight in a jiffy. And finally, in men's light heavyweight and cruiserweight news, a second look at David Benavidez has expressed interest to move up to cruiser and face Zurdo Ramirez. We've talked about this fight already several times from the David Benavidez angle. Why does David all of a sudden want to fight Zurdo? Here, we're going to talk about it from the Golden Boy Promotions angle, because for this to happen, they have to be receptive to it. They have to want to do it. It takes two to tango.
So would they?
I think they would. I think that David Benavidez has reached the end of the road with the PBC as far as the PBC's usefulness to him. David Morrell is a fight. That's a last resort. You can see that. He's put off fighting this guy for a little over a year, maybe 2. If he's doing it now, it's because he's run out of options. There's nobody else over there to fight, and we know he doesn't want to fight the winner of Better B versus Bivol. We've been all through that. So you have to imagine that if David Benavidez wins early next month, what the hell is he going to do after that? Because he's not fighting the winner of Better B versus Bivol.
So maybe he jumps ship. Maybe he crosses over to Golden Boy Promotions.
If he does, that definitely improves his chances of landing that Zurdo Ramirez fight. The opportunity to sign David Benavidez, I think that's something that Golden Boy would be very much receptive to, because it creates a situation to where if you make that fight, no matter who wins, you win. If they're both your guys, if they're both your fighters. To get that fight, David might have to enter into a promotional pact, a deal with Golden Boy, but I think he would do it.
under the counsel of Samson Lukowicz, his longtime guy who does a lot of business with Golden Boy. Don't forget, that's where he took Gabby Fundora.
And don't forget, that's what Golden Boy Promotions told Shakur Stevenson, that if he wanted to land a William Zepeda fight, he would first have to sign to Golden Boy.
And I think they would take a similar stance when it comes to David fighting Zerto. But David, I think he would go along with it. I think he would do it.
And they would want him to, because he needs the refuge, and they need the bodies. They need the names. They need to beef up their stable. In a situation like this, they wouldn't be required to outsource one of the few champions they have to a Riyadh season show.
Huh?
The Jayo Pataya fight. The Jayo Pataya fight that Turkey LL Sheikh likely wants to make. Jai Opataya, who's fought on several Riyadh season shows already. If that fight were to get made, it's not going to be a Matchroom show, and it's not going to be a Golden Boy show. It's not going to be something they do between them. It would be something that Turkey pays for.
You're losing me.
I don't think Golden Boy Promotions wants to make the Jai Opataya fight. I think they need an alternative. And putting Zerto in there with David instead of Jai, that would be the alternative. David needs an alternative to a fight with the winner of Better Be versus Bivol. Zerto needs an alternative to a Jai Opataya fight. They can seek refuge in one another. And if they're both signed to Golden Boy,
Golden Boy's likelier to make it.
as that wouldn't require them to outsource one of their fighters and one of the few champions they have. They can do the whole thing in-house to where they're in control of everything and they receive all the proceeds, all the benefits. They can bill it as a pay-per-view.
I think they would do it. I think they would like to.
And it's not a bad fight. It's not even a bad fight, to be honest with you. It's a fight that I wanted to see some years ago when they were both reigning as champions parallel to each other at 168. Zerto had the WBO, David Benavidez had just won the WBC.
Zerto was with Top Rank in those days. David was still with the PBC then. He's still with them now, but that could change.
And it is a good fight, though it being a good fight doesn't change that it's a sophisticated duck. It would be. David has the chance to fight for all the marbles at 175. If he forgoes that to fight for just 2 belts, just 2 at cruiser, I mean, you only really want to fight Zerto Ramirez because Dmitry Bivol already beat him.
And Artur Beterbiev just beat Dmitry Bivol. You don't want to tango with them.
For Zerto, if you forego a unification match with Jai Opataya for a fight with David Benavidez, it's a good fight, but simple question. Who's more proven at that weight? Who's a more proven cruiserweight? David Benavidez or Jai Opataya? I don't want to poo-poo all over the fight because it is a good fight. It is intriguing, and I think it would move the needle in America, though rest assured, it's a sophisticated duck if they do it.
And I think they would do it. I think this could happen.
I've long maintained that David has no intention of fighting the monsters at 175. He would rather face a guy that one of them beat. He likes his chances against him a lot better.
And Golden Boy might give him that crack at the apple. They might do it, so long as he makes a commitment to them.
Bottom line, this is a fight that could materialize this calendar year later on into it. I could see it happening.
Ramirez versus Benavidez is possible.